Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Michael Landau. Michael has been a professional musician for over 30 years. Since the beginning of his career, he found it beneficial and necessary to explore ways to perfect and optimize movement. A couple of years ago, he retired from his university teaching post and has been dedicating himself to teaching mindful movement. Michael teaches mindful movement and helps his clients to create a healthy habit of physical activity. In his online courses, he creates a learning space where his students challenge their brains and bodies to become less stiff and sore and more mobile and nimble. They learn how to sustain a short daily movement practice that is a life changer for many of them. Michael's teachings mingles science and practical experience and uses movement as a doorway to holistic well-being and personal growth. When the pandemic hit, his practice had to be transformed to fit online setting, and he developed a new modality that proved immensely successful. He launched a course of tiny daily movement practices, just 3 minutes a day. He found out that this tiny daily habit of stepping out of the hamster wheel and dedicating 3 minutes to focused, mindful exploration of movement had a profound effect on his clients' well-being. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Michael. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you, Dwight. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Yes, this will be a great conversation. You're in, just so the listeners know, you're in Chile. I'm in Canada. Most of my listeners know, but for some of the new listeners, we're on different, pretty much sides of the world, but that's okay. We all have a commonality, and that's to serve and help others. So, Michael, one of the things I like talking with people is about their origin story. And I don't mean just their background from the time they, started becoming successful or went to college, university. I'm talking about your origin right from when your earliest memories, because what happens with us in life is literally from childhood to adulthood, everything that happened to us when we were a kid even affects us to who we are today as an adult, the decisions we've made, the different paths we've, traversed and stuff. So again, part of that has to do with the listeners know that very well. I don't like when people start in the middle and forget the front, because really, how do you get to know people if you don't start at the beginning of their lives? So could you do me a favor, Michael? Tell me your origin story and what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
Okay, looking way back. So, well, one thing that I've always had present in my life from very early age is music. My father was a fanatic of classical music. He played the piano a little bit. He always listened to music. He used to record music programs from the radio on these big tapes in one of these ancient machines. And my mother was an illustrator in a children's magazine, so it was kind of artistic in the feeling. I started to play the piano at 7, so playing the piano kind of accompanied me throughout my life. And then, on the other hand, my father was a scientist. He was one of these old school scientists who thought, if you can't see it, if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist. So I had that as a background. I had no religious background, no spiritual environment, really. I grew up in Israel. So let's say a Jewish family, a Jewish country, being Jewish was never an issue, but I had nothing to do with religion, really. So as I grew up, I had these different pulls. On the one hand, I was playing the piano always. I wasn't really passionate with it as a kid. So deciding to become a professional musician was a pretty late decision. And I had this need to search for something that is beyond the practical, the physical, the easily visible. So there's that. I don't know. I could go into endless stories.
Sure, you can share some stories. Go ahead.
The thing that I really remember from myself as a kid and as an adolescent and growing up is that I had no idea what to do with my life for quite a long time. So I grew up in Israel. I went to school. School was easy. I never had to struggle very much. I was a good learner, but I wasn't really passionate about anything in particular. I went to the university, to the Tel Aviv University, and studied English literature and humanities, a kind of a double major of different things that were interesting and kind of opened my mind. I had to read a lot. I had to write a lot. I was mentally active. And it wasn't until I was 28 that I decided that music is it. And this is when I started playing with other people. I always played the piano and I had fun, and I had a good sight reading talent, let's say. So I never memorized anything, but I would put the score in front of me and played, and I played lots of things and I enjoyed it. But I never thought of being a concert pianist, like sit at home for 8 hours a day and practice and study things and memorize. I couldn't memorize. So this wasn't even an option. And then I had a cellist friend. I had a singer, a neighbor who was a singer. I started playing with them, accompanying them. And I thought, this is something I would go for. This was, it's completely different. It's like a different aspect of piano playing. It's a lot about communication, about creating something together. And you're allowed to do it with a score in front of you. I didn't have to memorize, which was an issue for me. I really couldn't memorize it. I thought I didn't have that faculty. So at age 28, I went to Vienna, Austria, and studied in the Vienna Conservatory, a school with hundreds of years of tradition. Very good place to be in for music studies. So I studied in a class of pianists and singers. So I specialized in vocal music, accompanying singers. This is the beginning of my professional life as a musician. So I specifically remember one moment. I finished studying. I got my first paying job, a dream come true. I was invited to accompany a master class, a retreat, 10 days retreat for singers. There was a singing teacher, about 10 singers, and me, the pianist, accompanist. So I was sitting there at the piano in this beautiful setting, a small Austrian town, great food, great place we were living in, the mountains, everything is green, everything is clean, everything works. This is Austria. It really beautiful place. And I was playing this beautiful music with these wonderful young singers. And my back was killing me. Each day it was worse. I had to lie down on this stage. We were in this music school, great stage, a great concert hall, a small one, a lovely piano. Everything was perfect, and I was really in pain. And I was sitting at the piano, struggling to stay up. Between one rehearsal and the next, I had to lie down, put my feet up. And so you can imagine that this was pretty exasperating. It was like, what was going through my mind is, I studied this, I want to do this, I can't do it. This is not for me, this is the wrong career, I won't survive it. So imagine that. So I started looking for ways to use myself differently. I found the Feldenkrais method, which is a method of conscious movement. It works through movement to learn, to perfect yourself, to optimize what you do, to move in a different, more economical, more perfect way. It is very good for athletes, for high performance people, actors, circus artists, musicians, of course, because you do the same thing again and again for days, sitting at the piano. It's the same movement, the same posture. It is repetitive. Anything that is not really perfect can accumulate into pain, and you hurt yourself. So I joined this the training of the Feldenkrais method, became a practitioner, and well, had to solve my acute back pain attack. But after this training, or during the training, I really felt how I am changing in body, mind, spirit. I really reorganized myself in a very profound way. And this is something that has accompanied my musical career. I always had ways to examine myself, to see what I'm doing. If I had some discomfort, I knew how to play with it and before it becomes acute, and I could help other people with it. So this was kind of as a profession, as a line of work, it was always secondary, because I worked as a university professor. I stayed in the Vienna Conservatory for some 12 years as a teacher. Then I came to Chile. I married my Chilean wife. I moved to Chile, and I worked in the university here in Valparaiso for 15 years or so. And 2 or 3 years ago, I decided this is enough. 30 years at the piano, good enough. Did my thing, and decided to dedicate myself to working with movement, with people, helping them. People really need this. People move little, are very sedentary. There are so many back problem, knees problem, issues with just being in the world. And this method in particular, and the way I applied it, and the way I learned to work with people based on this musical career, I thought I had something to offer, and a contribution, and I decided to dedicate myself to this. I knew how to do it. I've been a Feldenkrais practitioner for 25 years. So I thought, no problem, I can make this my line of work. I didn't know what I was going into because it is the first time in my life, but I think 2.5 years ago, that I was independent, entrepreneur, had my own business. So it wasn't so much about teaching what I knew how to teach, it was about knowing how to have a business. I started doing things, marketing, trying to organize classes, organize workshops, try to find people who would come to private sessions. I found out that I had no idea how to do it, and more, I had no idea how to manage my time. I was very stressed. I was working the whole day in trying to have a business, understand what it means to have a business. I took courses. I did online master classes. I had to learn a lot of things of how to become an independent person, like have my own business. And so part of it went into the practice, and especially now in the COVID time when everything went online, I find out that everybody is stressed somehow. It is very strange. People are, when people started being more at home, leaving less, somehow they had more to do, they had less time, that everything, the normal routine was destroyed. They had to reorganize themselves. And I found this, as I was learning to do it myself, that this is something that I need to incorporate into my movement practice. So what I'm teaching now, and now that I'm practically only online for over a year, what I came to develop is this movement practice that is daily, that is very short, so it becomes a habit. So it only works online. Nobody's going to come to my studio for a 3-minute class, right? This is too much traveling. But when they do it at home, it makes sense. So this is a particular online modality. And I found, as my students were going with me and doing these 3 minutes a day for over a period of time, that it is very effective. I didn't know what would happen. This was an experiment for me. It is extremely effective because in 3 minutes, you can make a small difference. Something happens. And the way we work in the class is, I like the way you describe what you are doing. Step out of the hamster wheel, right? Live life on purpose. This is, I can say I do the same as you through movement. So I really like your language, the way you describe what you are teaching. Yeah. You take movement as a doorway into the way you work. So we look inside, we do some movement, and it's different every day. The field for exploration is infinite because
I look forward
so
to
much possibility of action.
I look forward to diving into that further. I just want to go over a little bit of your origin, if possible. Interesting, you grew up in Israel. Where exactly did you grow up in Israel? I've been to Israel before.
In Tel Aviv.
Oh, I love Tel Aviv. Unfortunately, they're going through a lot of terrible things right now in Israel. But yeah, Tel Aviv is my favorite place in Israel. I loved it there. I spent a few different. Yeah, well, you grew up in Israel, so beautiful, beautiful country. Unfortunately, they're going through some tribulations and trials right now. But yeah, I was just curious as to exactly where you grew up in Israel. It's kind of interesting to me, though, that you'd have no religious background growing up in Israel. Is that because your parents were not spiritual at all, or did you avoid it because they were too spiritual? Is there a reason why you didn't become religious living somewhere like Israel?
My parents had zero relationship with religion.
Okay.
And they came from this secular background. My father, um, both of them grew up in Poland, and like big city Poland, Jewish people in Poland. So the city people in Poland didn't live in closed communities. They didn't speak Yiddish. They spoke Polish, and they were kind of assimilated. And my father went into this scientific path. He was a doctor in botany and was an agronomer. So he was very scientifically oriented. And my mother also grew up in an assimilated family, so they had no religion, basically.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. I just was
Yeah,
curious.
no. So
Yeah.
it wasn't my rebellion. It was just not an issue for me. And Tel Aviv is quite secular. Like my classmates, my environment was not religious, so it was just.
Oh, I found being in Tel
life.
Aviv. I found being in Tel Aviv was amazing because, like everybody was just warm, welcoming. Nobody asked you, "Hey, what's your religious card? Show me. Are you religious or not religious? Are you Christian or Jewish?" Or, they didn't ask me stuff like that. They just treated me like a human. So I quite enjoyed being in Tel Aviv. The reason I asked the question is because I've interviewed and had conversations with people that had no religious ties, but it was because their parents were way overbearing about it, right? So I figured if I found it interesting, the listeners might want to know too. So that's why I asked the question.
No, wasn't my rebellion. My father had to rebel because his grandfather was a like this really Orthodox Jew and wanted him to study in a cheder in this little school where they taught people little kids like three-year-olds to read Hebrew and to read the Bible. And so my father did the rebellion bit.
So you didn't have to worry about that. It skipped a generation. That's great.
Yeah.
I like you talking about the fact with you just started playing with some neighbors, and then at 28 you ended up in Vienna, which place I'd love to go as a side note. And you spent quite a few years in Vienna. And it's interesting to me how people go from place to place until you finally landed where you are currently. Like you said, you found your bride and got married, and I believe you said you have some kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a daughter. My wife has a daughter, so we.
Oh, okay.
2 kids growing up here.
Oh, well, that's and now that's your home. But yeah, you've gone through some interesting journeys in your life to go from being in Tel Aviv to going to Vienna to be ending up in Chile. So you've had some education, some geography in regards to geographical education, which is kind of neat. I like how you talked about the fact of playing music and your back became very sore, and you segued into sedentary lifestyle and what's happening during the pandemic. I know myself, I can be 6-8 hours sitting. So I've programmed my watch, and sometimes I have to ignore it because in the middle of a couple hours of conversation or a meeting with a client or a coach coaching somebody, you can't just get up. My watch will remind me, it vibrates and says, if you look at the screen, it says stand up, right? Move around. And that's part of the problem. So I believe what you talked about being a practitioner in that movement for 25 years and developing a program to help people out, which I think is very noteworthy, because so many people, as you said, get stuck in that rut of sitting all the time. And then they come home from the pandemic and now they're forced to sit even more. And even if they're not working out of their house, some people aren't in Canada. Some people don't have lost their jobs. They're out of work. Their companies aren't functioning right now. So they're sitting on the couch watching television for however many hours a day, and it affects your body. Obviously, it gets locked up. So I'd love to learn. You talked a little about you developed into an entrepreneur. You studied to understand that, and now you use online to teach people that 3-minute program. So, Michael, you teach us mindful movement, which helps your clients to create a habit that's healthy, because of lack of physical activity. What exactly is mindful movement, and why should people care to learn this practice specifically?
Okay, so I use movement to go into and create a space for learning. So it is not really about exercise. It's not something that you repeat. It is not about the mechanical effect of movement, which is very important. I mean, you need aerobic movement. You need to accelerate your heart and your breathing. You need to get moving, like mechanically. And if you want to build muscle mass, you go to the gym and you repeat some movement. You use weights or run or cycle or whatever. This is all very important and necessary. We need to be in movement. But my particular line of using movement is going into learning space. So I don't really use repetition in order to automate. You also talk about automation. I really found some parallels between the way you describe what you do and what I do in a different line. So automation is a very basic brain function. We need automation. You learn a skill, you repeat it, and after a while, when you do it repeatedly, it goes into deeper parts of your brain, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. This is really necessary. We don't want to invent the wheel for every action we do in our lives. For example, now you are sitting up, you are playing with balance and with your relationship with gravity constantly. Your brain is busy doing this. Are you aware of it? Of course not. You don't want to be aware of it. You are busy talking to me. You don't want to do all this consciously. And when you stand up, your balance is precarious, and you have to adjust it and play with it constantly. This is not conscious, and we don't want it to be conscious. This has become automatic. But if you look at a kid, 1-year-old, stands up for the first time, their whole being is focused on keeping the balance. This is hard work. It is not obvious at all. And it takes a while. And when it becomes automatic, when you're 2 years old, you walk freely and you can do other things because you have already automated the balance play. So this is an example. And this is this process of learning, of taking something into conscious thinking, focusing on it, seeing what it is that you do, allows you to open up options. This is adult learning. So we take very basic functions like balance, for example, and we go back, we take it out of the automatic pilot and look into it. So we slow down, we make very small movements, we observe the details with clarity. You're mindful of the movement, and this gives new information to your brain, opens up some new options, some new possibilities. We play with variations, and this information is integrated into your brain, into your system, and into the automatic pilot. It is like improving doing a 2.0 version of the same automation.
So
if I
enhance,
do-
are you enhancing a habit then? Is that what you're talking about? Is they have a specific habit set, you re-educate them so that they go to the next level of that habit of living their lives?
I'd say that most of my classes explore habitual patterns. So I look into very basic things, like, for example, balance. This was one example. Another is turning. How do you turn your head? How much of your spine is involved in turning? How do you distribute the turning along your spine? You have habitual patterns about it. They are not optimal. They are never optimal. There's always something to improve. So I can have a 3-minute session exploring turning. Turn your head, turn with your shoulders, turn with your pelvis. Observe what is happening along your spine. And there is some new information there. By focusing on it, by being mindful, by paying attention and slowing down, you absorb some new information. You learn something about yourself. And this goes into your habitual pattern of turning. And you can feel really, what surprised me is that after 3 minutes, you can feel a difference. It may be very small, but something happened. And the fact that something happened means that learning occurred. So there is some tiny bit of learning that can happen in 3 minutes. And well, it is not huge. It is not going to change your life. But if you do it daily, on a daily basis, as a habit, take 3 minutes a day to step out of the hamster wheel, look at yourself, slow down, look at what you're doing, look at the things that you don't usually need to look at because they are already assimilated, they're already automated. You look at them, you add some details to your system. Your nervous system gets richer. Your brain wakes up. Because if you're always on the automatic pilot, you never learn anything new. You just do what you already know how to do.
The hamster wheel.
Where it's going, like
Living on a hamster wheel. I said living on that hamster wheel, just doing the same thing over and over again.
And all of us do this. Most of our lives, we count on things that we already know how to do, and we have to perform. When you do your work, you need to do your work. You don't play with options and see maybe it will work, maybe not. No, you do what you already know how to do. And it's the same with your relationships, with your daily activities. When you wash the dishes, when you walk, when you walk the dog, or when you talk to your children, all of this is has habitual patterns that are very well established and allow us to do our lives and perform the chores of life. It is very important that the habitual patterns are there, but we need to take some time, like take a little parenthesis, like step out of the hamster wheel is a good metaphor, for a few, even for a few minutes, and look at yourself and improve something. Do something to keep growing, to I call it step on this upward spiral. Because if you're not, and you come to my age, and when people start aging, it becomes an issue. You feel that from now on it is downhill, because this is what we are used to think. You age, you deteriorate, you can do less and less things. Your abilities decrease. Your mobility decreases, and I sustain, and I've seen it happening. It is not a matter of age. If you stay on this upward spiral, you can keep growing, you can keep learning, and you can keep being mobile and active for as long as you live.
That's amazing. It's really interesting to hear that, you mentioned about the fact that people just assume that this is aging and we're just on a decline and it is what it is. But in reality, we can use, your teachings in regards to, that short daily movement of 3 minutes, and it becomes a life changer for people. I guarantee there's people that are listening that are skeptical, and you can't really blame people because 3 minutes isn't a lot. Is this 3 minute practice something that harnessed the idea yourself, or is it something that's a combination of over the last 25 years? Like, how did you come up with 3 minutes as being
So,
that target?
part of my learning process as I became independent and an entrepreneur was looking into the science of habit building. I read this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I'm familiar.
I recommend it to everybody. It is short, it is clear, it is precise, and it is extremely practical. It is based on the science of habit creation and behavior change, which is there is a lot of science around it, and it becomes really, really clear that you don't change anything that you want to change in your life by making a big decision and taking one step and all of a sudden you're somebody else. It doesn't work this way. You want to change something, find you have some kind of goal. You want something else in your life. You break it down to the tiniest possible bits. You take one bit that is very easy to do and you repeat it. This is the way change occurs. We have lots of habits. There are many things that we do every day continuously. Some of them are bad habits that we want to get rid of. Some of them are part of who we are and what we do in our lives. And all of this bulk of habits define who we are, really. You are defined by the things you do every day, not by some big project. This is why New Year's resolutions fail so often. They're too big. So you take a tiny thing, you just, the first step to your big goal of change, and you do it every day. And just the fact that you become consistent, accumulate over time incredibly, and this is, you can calculate it mathematically. It says if you improve anything 1% each day for a year, by the end of the year, you'll be 37 times better. 3,700% better? Calculate it. I don't know. I didn't do the math, but I believe him. It works this way. So if in those 3 minutes something happens, and I've seen it happening, and people, my students testify to it, something happened, they feel something different, then there was a change, a tiny little change every day. So you do this change that allows you to do something better, to feel a little more comfortable, to have a little more mobility. It is different every day because as I told you, the explorations are infinite. You can keep going forever, exploring different possible activities, actions, movement. So with just this tiny little change every day, you keep growing. And the growth is exponential because it is mathematically exponential. So it does work. If you do it for 30 minutes a day, you may grow faster, but most people just won't do it. This is why I changed the modality.
Made it 3 minutes.
The regular class is an hour long, and people come to my studio, they lie on the floor, and we do an exploration that is more extensive. with many steps, and it is lovely, and people get up and feel a real change. But in the best of cases, they come once a week and do it. In the worst case, which is for most other people, they never get to do it because they don't find this 1 hour. And it includes they have to drive here or come here to my studio, lie for an hour, go back home. It's like maybe a 3-hour venture, and most people just don't have that time. So the 3-minute idea was take the time issue out of the equation. Anybody can find, even in the busiest of days, 3 minutes to stop and do it. So, and it works. I just saw it working. I have so many testimonials of the people who joined my pilot group, and they grew to love it, and it became a habit. It was something they were expecting, they were enjoying. They got the email that says, here's here's today's exercise, and they loved it, and they opened it and clicked the link. So it became a habit. It became something that is incorporated into their lives, and over time, serious changes happen.
So can you go, so that the listeners know, so that, you know, we can direct them to seeking out your services. Can you go more into the fact of what the 3-minute process, you talk some about, you know, your shoulders, your neck, and your movement, and how you'll feel a difference after that 3 minutes. Can you step people through a little bit more specifics of it so they can understand exactly what that 3-minute process is? I realize that it started from your exploration. You talked about it and people being there for an hour and then coming back once a week. I realize it all started from that. So if you want to start from more details of how that exploration process shrunk down to that 3 minutes, and then what that 3-minute process would be for somebody, it would help the listeners, and I understand exactly the details, because I got some of it, but it's vague, right? We need a little bit more information. Otherwise, why would people, even my business, if I'm too vague, people aren't going to come and seek out my services, right? So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. Tell me a little bit more detail.
Yeah, of course. Talking about it is not the same as experiencing it.
Oh, of course, of course, of course.
So if you went to my page and sign up to, you get what they call a freebie. I have a little gift there, which is a document about habit building, like the 3 things that would make a new habit stick. This is the part of all of my new learning of habit creation. So that document you get as a gift from me, and then a day later you get a sample of a 3-minute session. So you're welcome to sign up to my page and you'll get the sample. But what I can suggest now is that we go through a 3-minute session.
Sure.
So are you ready to move?
Absolutely.
We'll ask our listeners to sit up in the chair. So just move to the front of the chair so you don't lean back. Just sit normally, but without leaning back. Have your feet well supported on the floor. And we'll go through a 3-minute session as an example on your chair. You don't have to get up. Okay, so start by tilting your right ear towards your right shoulder. So you want to side bend the neck, which means your nose keeps pointing forward. You don't turn, you just tilt sideways. To the right and back to the middle, only to one side. Okay, so you feel how your neck is curving sideways. You can feel a bit of your spine moving. And now let your arms hang next to your thighs towards the floor. And now as you tilt your head, keep going, tilt it and come back. Now you want to lengthen your right hand, your right arm towards the floor. As you tilt, and you come back to kind of the middle. So now if you think of lengthening your right arm to the floor, you can feel that more of your spine is participating in the tilting. And make sure you only tilt sideways. You don't turn your head. Your gaze stays forward. So now there's something happening in your chest. Maybe you can feel it all the way to your sit bones. Something is changing on the chair, your contact with the chair. Maybe one sitting bone is pressing more than the other. Maybe not. Just take a look. Okay, let go for a moment. And now lengthen your left arm up. You can have the elbow bent. You don't have to go very far. You just have the hand somewhere higher than your head. Your right arm still hangs towards the floor. And go back to tilting the head to the right, lengthening the right hand towards the floor. And now at the same time, lengthen the left hand towards the ceiling with the movement. As you come back, relax the arm. So you tilt your head. You feel like your hands want to go away from each other as you tilt. Now you can feel that the ribs on the left side open up as you tilt, and the ribs of the right side close together. It's like an accordion in your ribs. Do it one more time. And bring down your arm. Rest your hands on your thighs. Just feel yourself for a moment. You may feel some differences between the sides, the ribs, where the breathing goes, how both the sides of your chest expand as you breathe. Maybe one feels a little larger than the other. And just tilt your head a few times to the side. The first movement. And then tilt it also to the left. So go right and left, and feel if there's any difference between the sides. Okay, so I don't know if it was 3 minutes, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. When I record the sessions, I really make it 3 minutes precisely. So did you feel any difference?
Oh, yes,
between the sides in the
absolutely.
end?
Absolutely, I could feel it. And I think the talking part of it is important too, though, right? So that I was more cognizant and aware of the changes. So I was actually, when you mentioned about the rib cage and you were mentioning, feeling your arm going to the ceiling and the other one, them going opposite of one another as your right's going to the floor. I was more, as you were telling me, I was more cognizant of it. So yes, I could tell, and I can feel it right now. I can feel the difference between my right side right now as opposed to my left.
Of course. So part of what I'm doing, I'm giving instructions for a specific movement, and at the same time, I'm calling your attention, right?
That's great.
I'm pointing, look there, look at your ribs, look at your sit bones. So you see observe what is happening, and by directing your attention to parts of your body, this is like taking a very basic function like side bending, or you can call it lateral flexion. It is an anatomical possibility of the spine that we use constantly. It is part of our moving in space combined with other movements. So we take it apart, we look at it like in a microscope, and we dedicate these 3 minutes, to be mindful of what we are doing. So you in some way, what is happening in this session is that you improved the automatic combination, your brain map of side bending in a little way. In a few minutes, you're not going to feel different between the sides. It will kind of be integrated into you. You can forget about it, but there was some new information there. And this is in your system. You cannot unlearn what you have learned. So
That's amazing. I like that. So you say that, one of the things you mentioned, and I wrote down here, from when I was researching you last night, that it's not really about movement. So you are doing some movement. So is it more about being conscious of it? And like you were just saying, you talk about it, like, your sit bones, and be aware of your rib cage. So is it more of making sure that your thought process is integrated into the slight movements that you're doing? So when you say it's not really movement, is it more about the connection with the mind and the body?
So I like to remind myself, and I remind my students once in a while, that we are doing, it looks like a movement class, right? But it's not really about movement. We use movement as a doorway into our nervous system. This is a conversation with the nervous system, with your brain, and it's about improvement and growth. This wonderful ability that now science has caught up with, what we have known forever, that the brain is plastic. That brain plasticity is now quite accepted by everybody. Our brain can change, can change and grow for as long as we live. It has this ability to learn. And this is a learning process that is quite global and holistic. Something changed in the way you use yourself, in the way you are in the world. So movement is a good doorway into our learning process, because you have the feedback from your body. You get you use your sensations, your proprioception, your ability to sense yourself. So it is a very good field of exploration where you can make small changes, you can be conscious of them, and you can create a learning unit, let's say. This was a tiny learning unit. But what changes is not your movement as something mechanical. What changes is you.
So yeah, that makes sense. So the connection between our mind and body and our movements, and not being stuck into that auto way that we've lived our whole lives, right? That hamster wheel, we're literally willing to step off of it, like you mentioned, and learn something new. And your process, for the listeners, to me, it sounds simplistic, but yet it's not, because you have to realize, you have to actually think about it. And the realization of between your mind and your body, and that small slight movements is putting you in connection with yourself. That's the way I look at it. It's actually helping you become connected to your body, which is important. It's the only one you have, right? So we need to work on our mind and body connections, and people like Michael being able to pivot, which is, I find very impressive, that you pivoted from having, like you mentioned, people coming to your studio for an hour, and to have people do that. Obviously, that in itself is a testimonial, right? And then being able to pivot because of the pandemic to narrow it down to still help people in 3 minutes is amazing. So kudos to you for caring about and giving a heck. Like the whole mission of my brand and what I do is to find people that, have done things in their lives. And that's what we talked about, your origin, where I see you as a person that is always striving to better yourself and move forward in life. And you're never letting yourself be held back, all the way up to the pandemic and developing a program to help others out online for, whether or not the discussion with them is longer, but the process is developed so that you're teaching somebody how to do something in 3 minutes that can make a difference in their lives. That is amazing. And that's exactly the type of thing that I want to showcase and have been showcasing on my podcast. So I appreciate that. So Michael, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Okay, so I would like to emphasize what we were actually doing in these 3 minutes. We were using awareness. Awareness is like the way out of automatic pilot. The moment you use your awareness, you realize, you can see what you are doing, how you react, and this infiltrates into our daily life and interacting with the world. When you can see yourself with clarity, what you are doing, when your triggers have been pulled or pushed. And awareness is a skill. You learn and you become better at it as you do it. So find ways to awaken and improve your awareness. This in itself allows you to become a better person again and again, because you notice what is happening. As long as you're not aware, you're reacting automatically, you move automatically, you are in the hamster wheel, and you don't live your life on purpose, as you say. You let life happen to you. So awareness is kind of a key. Find ways to develop your awareness, to know how to look at yourself. And of course, there are different ways of doing it. When you meditate, you become aware of your mind, your thoughts. You look at it like very closely and see what happens in your mind. When you go to therapy, you become aware of your emotions, and you observe how you function in relation to your past, to your parents, to the world around you, to people around you. And with this particular method that I'm using, you become aware of your movement. So these are different aspects of our being and different ways of awakening awareness. But my suggestion to anybody, find a little time during the day where you can develop your awareness. And this is a way to become better in any area that you want to become better in.
Oh yeah, because really, how can a person live a life on purpose without awareness? It's pretty impossible. And I go through that myself. I know over the last year, changing how my practice is and developing my Give a Heck brand, it was awareness. I knew I wasn't, and in all awareness for the listeners started with me first. I needed to be aware of where I was lacking, what I was feeling. I felt like I wasn't moving forward. And I thought to myself, well, this is the pandemic. How many other people are feeling like that? What can I do, or what can I bring to the plate for them to give them hope, right? And by giving them hope, I think if a person has hope and they have faith in that things can change, their awareness level increases as well, because they become now more aware. They don't become stagnant. They decide once in a while to step off the hamster wheel instead of, just going around and around. And, and I think that's why a lot of people die younger than they need to as well, right? Not because of disease, but just people that pass away. And they say, oh, it's from natural causes. Well, the natural cause of what? their brain wasn't stimulated. They weren't aware that there could continue to grow and develop. And people such as yourself are giving people an opportunity through that, your 3-minute practice, through, just helping them become more aware of their state of their body and their mind and how they connect with one another. So, listeners, I hope you check out Michael. I know I'm going to put some more effort into getting to know the process, because I think it is imperative for us all to be aware that we can do little minute things to make a huge difference, a huge impact, and develop that into a habit, a good automatic habit, not a bad one, something that we can, do that's not too intensive. Because you think about it, you were doing it with an hour, at people coming to your studio for an hour. I imagine even after everything's done with the pandemic, you'll have a huge online presence where you'll still have to continually virtually do this. Wouldn't you agree? I don't think people are going to flock back to your studio when they can get you to do whatever over a computer.
I'll definitely keep this 3-minute experience alive, and this only works online.
Yeah,
I'm not going to have people come to me for 3 minutes every day. It doesn't work. So yeah, and I actually really enjoy teaching online. I find that it is different. You have to see what this medium allows for and how it is different, because if you try to imitate a live session on screen, it doesn't really work. But when you find what works and what doesn't, and the benefits that you can get from being at home, doing your thing in your environment, so you don't have to change clothes, you don't have to drive, you're just at home, and you take this little time to do something on screen. It is valuable. I find it very interesting, and it works.
Oh yeah, I can.
I'm definitely. I'm going to launch this 3-minute course, Persistent Growth, in a little while. I think in June, and then again and again.
Well, that's good though. I appreciate people such as yourself that are always wanting to help others level up. And along the journey, when we teach other, it helps us continue to level up and climb in life too. So thank you so much for that. So, well, our time is almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what is the best way to reach you?
So the best way is to go to my page, Persistent-Growth. I actually have it here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
This is my page, persistent-growth.com, and sign up. You'll be on my list. You will get my little gift of a document and another 3-minute session sample. And you'll be informed when the course is launched, so you can join.
Well, that's awesome. I'll make sure that it goes into the show notes. The listeners that are familiar with the show know where to go. Those that are new, you can go to giveaheck.com and go into the podcast portal, and you'll actually see where you can click on and see the show notes for Michael's and my conversation. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Michael. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn. It is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.